Hey guys, in this podcast we talk about different health topics. As we are not medical professionals, we'd ask for you to check with your doctor first before using any of the information provided in this podcast. Furthermore, we talk about third-party views. Please know that we have no intention of misrepresenting these views, and we apologize in advance if we do so. Thanks. Hey guys, welcome to another podcast. Today, what are we talking about, Paul?
So today the topic is confidence.
Okay.
Confidence is something that we all struggle with at times. Situationally, there's times when we're very confident and there are times we're not, and we hate that discomfort of not being comfortable in a situation.
Gotcha.
So you're probably asking yourself, why should I listen to Paul DeMott on confidence? Paul DeMott's not even that confident of a guy. Well, I'll tell you why. The thing is that I have made a lot of progress in terms of improving my confidence. I'd have to say I have some of the worst confidence ever. Like when I was younger, I thought badly of myself. I was a social perfectionist. I was always trying to make things perfect. I never seemed to be confident in any situation I was in. So the reason why you should listen to me is because I have a lot of experience trying to improve my confidence, just so I can do basic things. Okay. So I think I have some expertise, and I hope that what I can share can help you also. So that's why you can listen to me.
Okay, all right, just fine.
So why is it that in some situations we're confident and other situations we're not? I think that confidence ultimately stems from knowing going into a situation how it will end up.
Okay.
A lack of confidence also often is a result of being unsure of the outcome of an event.
Right.
So the common example is like you go on a date. A lot of times we're nervous and unconfident in a date because we think, I like this girl, but I could blow up this whole situation. It could go poorly.
Right.
And so we have these beliefs beforehand where we imagine how it's going to happen, and oftentimes we're scared of what the outcome could be because we can't entirely control the outcome.
Right.
So if you when you start driving, you're not very confident behind the wheel.
Right.
But as you drive, you get better.
Yeah.
And so now it's if I have to drive the Krogers, I'm not at all nervous because I know I can control the outcome and I know what the outcome is going to be. Only in rare instances will the outcome be different.
Right.
So this is basically why people are unconfident in situations and why some people are confident. But when we tend to take confidence and look at it in a social way, we tend to neglect looking at these aspects of it. So the common thing that people say is so-and-so's confident, so-and-so's not confident. He was born that way and he'll always have that confidence. Now, it's true that there's a genetic aspect to confidence. Some people will naturally be more confident. There's also an environmental influence in confidence, which probably plays a larger role.
Right.
If our parents are very social or very, if our parents are a public speaker, it's likely that we're going to have less fears going into public speaking than the average person because of our environment.
Right.
But the thing is, a lot of guys, a really common tendency for guys is to be incredibly nervous for dates and to be unconfident when meeting people of the opposite gender.
Right.
And they think these other guys were just born naturally. The thing is, don't make those assumptions. A lot of guys have had to work hard to be confident and to develop that skill set.
And one thing from an evolutionary standpoint too is the man is supposed to be the more confident of the individual, saying yes, this is going to succeed, while women are supposed to be more on the cautious side. Because if you think about it, the opposite of confidence is caution. You're abstaining from doing something because you're worried about what may happen if you do it. And we're gonna talk about this later, but the major thing is that you want to make sure you have a balance. You don't want to be too overconfident, and then you don't want to have a lack of confidence.
Well, okay, so in confidence, there's two elements that I find really important. There's sort of the internal element to it and the external, the empirical. The thing is that I think that there's a misconception that you can solve the confidence problem internally. So, I read a book Brian so-and-so, How to Be a Confident Person, and I can then become more confident. I think that confidence is a combination of the two, and one alone is not adequate.
So
you can go into a social situation over and over again, and you're most likely going to get more confident, but let's say you don't. If you don't, it's probably because of some internal issue that you have.
Gotcha.
But you can't fix an external issue just through an internal analysis, changing your thoughts. I think that you need experience in order to feel confident. So what I was saying before is that lack of confidence is ultimately the result of being unsure of an outcome.
Okay.
And so we often forget this in social situations, and we just assume so-and-so is confident and stuff like that. And we don't think of it in this way, and that's why a lot of times we don't develop confidence.
Gotcha.
So what happens is, let's say a guy is really afraid of dates. He's very unconfident when it comes to dating.
Yeah.
So he assumes that it's just because there's something wrong with him, and that other guys are just naturally confident.
Right.
And although there's some truth to it, the problem is perpetuated by the fact that he has this fear and he doesn't do it. Because ultimately, the thing that is going to make you more confident is experience, knowing the situation and knowing what the outcome is most likely to be. So the more often I'm going on dates, the more likely I am going to know what the outcome will be. And then as a result, I will feel more comfortable.
Okay,
this
so
situation.
confidence is really just about guessing whether something is going to succeed or not. But if you have done many different experiences like that, you can gauge better how if
Yeah.
it's going to succeed or not. Okay, I gotcha.
So yeah, so the problem that people have is that they just think I'm not a confident person. They label themselves like that, and as a result, they don't go into the situation and practice it. And ultimately, that's what develops confidence. So the guy who is more confident going on dates is more confident because he's gone on more dates for the most part.
Wow. Okay, or even asking girls out for that matter.
Asking girls out is a huge one. Yeah.
Right.
And so the problem is that guys need to be. If you're nervous and scared, that's normal.
Right.
Okay. So like every guy
Yeah.
is nervous and fear. There's certain social situations that always carry with them a lot of social pressure.
Right.
As a result, people generally feel nervous with those social situations until they have practiced enough to have enough reference experience to know that in that situation they will be okay.
Okay.
does that make
So
sense?
yeah. Okay. So basically, the thing is that with any situation that you're normally nervous about, the more you do of that situation, you will be more confident in it. And the other thing is this extends to phobias as well, right? Any phobia that you have is a worry. Like confidence is really the opposite of worry, right? So when you have like a phobia of heights, some people say, oh, well then just do a lot of activities where you are accustomed about going up very high.
You desensitize yourself
Yeah,
to that height.
right,
Yeah,
right.
And that's ultimately what we're doing in social situations is we're desensitizing. And so the problem isn't that maybe that you have an internal problem that needs to be fixed. There's probably an element of that, and an element of an internal problem. But ultimately, you're not getting the results you want. You're feeling nervous because you just haven't been in the situation enough to know what the outcome is likely to be.
Okay.
Now it doesn't mean you can control the outcome and stuff, but it just means that you know that worst case scenario isn't all that bad.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, like maybe if you're like worried about going into in debt, for example, or you're like worried about like being poor at some point, it's probably much worse in your mind than you actually perceive it to be. So if it's so bad and you're just like, oh, I just can't live on the streets, I just cannot do that. There's just no way I'd survive. If you actually had to live on the streets, you'd probably be okay. So
Exactly. And so okay, so basically what we've said so far is that confidence, the mistake that people make is that they believe that their confidence can be improved without repeating the situation and being in it more.
Right.
And so by not going in the situation because of fear of a lack of confidence, they never get better at the situation. So most confidence.
So you never ask out the girl.
Then you never ask out the girl, and then you don't get better. So a general rule of thumb is that if you're not confident in something, it's because you haven't done it enough. And this is just somewhat common sense. So you need to do it more and understand that when you do it, you're going to be nervous and uncomfortable. But through the act of doing it, you start to develop confidence in it.
Okay.
So people need to stop thinking of confidence as sort of this metaphysical, attainable state. It's more of a feeling from experience, from reference points that is developed over time.
Okay, I gotcha. So if you're like, I don't know, even if you're worried about like some people are worried about interacting with kids, like they have a lot of fear of doing that. Your solution is just interact with more kids. Is that?
Yeah, and then we're also going to discuss some internal battles that have to be fought to develop confidence and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, number one thing is get yourself more experience and be okay with failing. It's sort of the perfectionist problem. We want to be good at like everything to be perfect, but to get everything to be perfect, we have to fail a lot.
Yeah,
If we don't allow ourselves to fail, then we can never get to that.
One practical example that I encounter a lot of students or a lot like colleagues of mine, I should say. This sounds so professional. No, but one thing is that a lot of students sometimes want to go into like pharmacy aid school or like a physician's aid school or a nurse practitioner school instead of like medical school, because medical school has like this overwhelming like challenge that you have to overcome. And because of the field, the nature of medicine, it's a very cutthroat, competitive, perfectionist type of field. And I think a lot of students actually choose to go to like PA school or nurse practitioner school just because they feel like they're not going to be a perfectionist when it comes to medical school because the competition is so fierce. And so they decide not to even go to medical school. So I've found, I mean, that's just my opinion. And obviously there are other like incentives like money and time and things like that. But the whole point is that if you're afraid of something because you don't think you're going to be able to nail a 95% success rate on it, that usually inhibits you much more than being comfortable with like a 70% success rate. So.
And so that kind of digs into what we'll be talking about, like in terms of internal issues that have to be resolved.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a distinction between two types of confidence.
Okay.
I believe that there's two types of confidence. One is self-esteem, and the other is ego confidence.
Okay.
Now, let me just explain to you what like sort of ego confidence that is derived from the ego is basically confidence where we say because we feel confident in ourselves because we are good at this or good at that.
Okay.
So I
give
just
me an
say,
example. Yeah.
I am confident at my skills in Super Smash Brothers because I am better than Nick is. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So it's constantly comparing and assessing different qualities of
To other
ourselves to
individuals.
others.
Okay.
And that's why it's ego related. We tend to have this tendency to derive our self-confidence from
other people
our comparisons between other people and stuff.
And this is why, like, if you went to like a really good school like Harvard or something, you could feel like an idiot, but in reality, you are extremely intelligent. It's just the people around you are also extremely intelligent. So and they just happen to do a little bit better than
And
you.
so yeah, so you can see a guy at Harvard who's very intelligent, who's basing his intelligence off of comparisons between other people.
Right.
And so a lot of confidence that we have is derived from comparing ourselves to other people, because we're very social creatures, so we want to compare ourselves to this and that. But this type of confidence has its limitations, because we can't continually be better at stuff than other people,
Right.
and we can't be better at everything than everyone else. So how
Right.
do you gauge like whether, because I'm better at table tennis than Nick is, but Nick is better at Super Smash Bros than me,
Or-
like
yeah,
we're
whatever.
deriving our confidence from very superficial things,
Right.
that don't really mean much. And so at times we can feel confidence. We feel confident when we're winning, when we're good at stuff.
Right.
But of course, we meet people who are confident regardless of whether they're good at stuff. You can meet someone who's incredibly confident in themselves, yet they don't seem to be good at anything in particular.
Wow. Okay.
And so what I believe is the difference is that they experience self-confidence, self-esteem.
Okay, and
I
that's
think
the second type.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
that's the
second
second type. And self-esteem is a much more ideal type of confidence, because it's not determined by the outcomes of situations.
Huh,
So it's
okay.
not. So we can feel it at all times. Yet confidence is limited by experiences. So I can only be confident if I won, but I
Oh.
can feel self-esteem regardless. So that's
So
sort of
is
the-
like self-esteem more of like I tried my best and I'm confident because I know I'm going to try my best? Or
I'd say that's more ego. It's still ego confidence, and I don't want to say that like ego-related confidence is bad necessarily.
Okay.
It's just that in order to develop a core sense of confidence, meaning that we are confident in an array of situations and not just specific ones, then we need to have something called self-esteem. So I talked
Okay.
about like going on a date and how experience allows us to become more confident in the date. Well, at the same time, the inner world, there's this thing called self-esteem,
Gotcha.
and so we can develop the outer confidence from ego confidence much faster if we have a strong sense of esteem.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is like people commonly try to compare results with other results.
Outcomes, yeah,
Yeah, of other
and
people.
they base their confidence on the outcomes of situations.
Right.
While there's some people who have sort of this inherent self-esteem, and so I want to talk about what that is.
Yeah.
So I think that self-esteem is really noticeable in children.
Okay.
If you look at kids, they are not constantly comparing themselves, like this. I'm not gonna say that. Like at a certain age, they start doing it, but at a young
Right.
age, they say whatever they want to. They ask whatever questions. They speak in front of each other, and they feel good and stuff. Like a lot of children are really happy.
Yeah.
And they're not basing they're not assessing their confidence based on whether they're good at this or good at that.
Right,
Some
right.
children do, of course, but they have this sort of self-esteem, this natural feeling of feeling good. And basically, we all possess this, but at a certain age, we start, especially adolescents particularly, we start comparing ourselves to other people in order to have a sense of self-worth.
Okay. And so you're saying if you derive your sense of self-worth from comparing to other people, you ultimately lose because you cannot be the best at everything.
Yeah, and you cannot maintain it. So you
Yeah.
may be confident one day, but then the next day, when that still goes away, you lose your confidence.
I get you.
But self-esteem is something that's much more stable.
Gotcha. Okay.
And self-esteem is just sort of derived from recognizing that you are a human being, that you fail sometimes. You're not going to be perfect, but just recognize that you have inherent value as a human being, and you have the right to be confident regardless of these external factors. So it's sort of a
Wow.
belief thing.
Yeah.
It's what you believe about yourself,
Okay.
and it comes from not from comparing, but just from beliefs about who we are as a person in general.
Okay, so just to recap. So you're saying like if you believe that you have self-worth, then you have because you have value, you instill self-esteem or confidence within yourself, which helps you approach situations where you're not very confident about.
So like when you're going, instead of not going on a date because you don't feel like you have the confidence to go, you say, you accept the fact that you might mess up, but you say like I have a person of value, I should do what's good for me, and then you go and do it, and you build that ego confidence from experience.
Okay.
So the two can benefit each other, but one of without the other does not work. It's sort of the internal versus external.
Yeah.
So you have to have reference points often to feel confident in a situation, but having self-esteem and this internal sense of self-worth will allow you to more quickly develop that, because it will push you to go do it when otherwise you might not.
Now, and one thing I want to point out, I don't know if this is really more like a dilemma or something, but I honestly think you're really onto something, because this makes a lot of sense to me. If you believe you have, like some people might be like, well, how do you know if you have self-worth or not? It might be just a question of like balance, because if you believe you have self-worth, that allows you to become more confident. All right, and that's that. But let's say you don't have self-worth, but I mean, let's just say like the truth is you don't have
I'm
self-worth.
saying that self-worth is that it's important to have self-esteem. You must have a philosophical belief that as a human being, regardless of any of the qualities about you, anything about you, you have intrinsic value.
Right, but I'm saying let's say like philosophy aside, let's just say like in the reality is like you don't have self-worth. But if you believed you had self-worth from your philosophy, it wouldn't matter. You wouldn't get punished for believing the wrong thing, and
Yeah,
you'd still be
and
confident.
and ultimately, we talked about this before, but perception is reality.
Right.
So if you believe you have self worth and you act and you feel confident and stuff, even if you lack any reasons, ego reasons
Yeah.
to have it, your life will be better as a result of believing it. So it's a win-win to believe that you have value and
Self-worth.
believe you have self worth.
Wow,
There's
okay.
nothing bad there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so basically, to end that sort of thread is that I think that it's important to have ego-driven confidence where we gain reference experiences that make us more confident in a given situation. But to really develop that, we need to have a basic philosophical beliefs about ourselves and recognize our inherent value beforehand.
Gotcha.
So whenever you're looking at developing confidence, you need to assess both elements of it. So basically, I've talked a little bit about my theory of like confidence and stuff. Now I want to get into the stuff that people would really like. It's like, how do you develop confidence and stuff?
Okay.
Like, how do you become a more confident person?
Man, so
To
much
me,
to learn.
one of the things that really influenced my life and my theories on confidence was watching a documentary on stand-up comedy.
Huh. Okay.
And learning about what stand-up comedy is, because a lot of people are scared to death of doing something like standing in front of people and telling a joke, because it's such it puts you
in like
it puts you in a situation that really evaluates objectively whether you're funny or not.
yeah, and there's so much
If
pressure.
you say a joke and no one laughs, you're not funny. There's
Yeah.
so much social pressure involved there.
Right.
So like we have stand-up comedians have a lot of respect, because everyone's like, man, how do you get up there and do that?
Yeah, because the risk of failure is so emotionally devastating. Yeah.
And so when I started learning about stand-up comedians, like you learn that like most of them start out getting booed off stage, then heckled off, telling jokes that are just bombs. Like almost every famous comedian has failed miserably many times, and the only reason why they're so famous today is because they kept doing it.
Wow.
And they developed confidence through doing it. So I learned actually a couple techniques from them that I apply to my everyday life.
Wow, okay.
We experience something called situational confidence a lot, where we are very confident in one situation but not another situation.
Right.
So I want to talk specifically about what we do when we're not confident in a specific situation, how we can plan.
Okay, so we'll take me as an example. So like, if I were to go into like, I don't know, we're talking about like astronomy or something, I'd feel really confident in that discussion because I kind of know a little bit about it. But if I were to ask out a girl, on the other hand, I would not feel very confident. So I'm listening in. What do I do?
Okay, so yeah, so we're gonna use that as like the context for this conversation. Like, how do you go about asking a girl out when you lack that confidence?
Okay.
So I'm not gonna tell you to just go out and do it, but that's something that would still work. But you can do better than that. You can feel confident in yourself before going out.
Okay.
To some extent, you're still gonna feel nervous. So the thing that I learned from stand-up comedians is that in order to feel comfortable on stage, you have to prepare. Preparation goes into everything.
Okay.
These guys are not just walking on stage and spitting jokes out.
Right.
They are preparing to the point where they know that they're going to get laughs. So one general rule of thumb in stand-up comedy is that you never open with a joke that you don't know is funny. So you never try new material.
Right, on the intro.
You never start the routine new. By the way, stand-up comedians use the same material over and over again. They have routines. They don't go every night making up new jokes.
Okay.
They write new routines, but it generally takes like a month or so to write like 5 minutes of material.
Wow, okay. Jeez.
And that's just because they need to determine, like, make sure it's funny. And the way they practice is so that it appears like they're doing it on the spot. And that's why you get that. That sense from them.
Yeah. Wow.
And so what I took from that is that they're preparing, and so the first joke always has to be funny. So I said, there's a lot of social interactions that you're very uncomfortable in. So why not go prepared with something that you know will work, that has been time tested to work?
Okay. Well, Paul, I mean, I can't walk in and say, "Did it hurt?" When you fell from heaven. I mean, what is something that you could do?
So that's like a pickup line and it's cheesy and stuff, and maybe it would work or something in certain situations. So the important thing is to figure out what is something that does work, and then you can know going into it that if it doesn't work out, that it was because of your delivery, not because of the words that you specifically said.
Okay.
And so, like we discussed before, like a lot of communication is body language.
Right.
Most communication is body language. Very little is dependent on the verbal stuff. So you can screw yourself over verbally when you're asking a girl out on a date. You can say something really weird that just like creeps her out and she leaves. So, but mainly, what you want to be able to do is isolate everything and be as confident as you can going into it that what you're doing is going to work.
Okay.
So you can isolate by knowing what you're going to say beforehand and knowing that it's going to work. How do you do that? You come up with stuff and you ask people if it's funny, or you look up stuff that maybe other people say that they've gotten results from.
Okay. So the whole point is, like, if you do all this preparation and you double check with other people, the fact that you are prepared for this makes you feel more confident.
Yeah. Preparation is the number one way to feel more confident. So if I'm going to give a speech in front of a lot of people, I'm not going to get more confident by going through all these cognitive fallacies. Maybe a little bit, but the number one way I can feel more confident is just preparing.
Okay.
But preparing for the specific situation. It doesn't help for me to just be in front of a mirror talking. It will help a little bit. I'm not going to say it doesn't help, but if I can imagine the situation as real as it can be, every little detail of it, by knowing what I'm going to do, I can be confident. So even stuff like walking onto stage, can be challenging in front of a lot of people because everyone's eyes are on you.
Yeah.
So if you know specifically how you're going to walk on the stage and you've practiced it, then it just becomes muscle memory and you just go on and do it.
Right.
And same with the words that are being said.
Okay, now I don't, just to be devil's advocate on this, I have just found personally for me, when it comes to like PowerPoint presentations or different presentations I have to give in front of people, I've actually found that if I prepare, I get more nervous. And the reason why, like if I just do it on the spot, I just feel more in the zone for some reason. And I think the reason why, that's why I don't even write notes before I do a podcast like this, because I feel like I'm almost restricted. Like I feel like, oh, I might miss a point. Like I have to make sure I get all these points in.
Often preparation is very logical, and oftentimes like when we're communicating, like we're using the emotional side. So we can kind of hurt ourselves, like if we're going into it like with this memorized line and we're just worried that we're not going to say it right and stuff.
Right. But I definitely think there's maybe too much preparation you can do, and I think it's tailored to each individual what they seem more comfortable with. So honestly, it's like practicing the amount of preparation that you want per situation. That's also another thing too.
And so like a stand-up comedy example, you're gonna want to have a joke that you know is gonna work, but at the same time, you're not gonna want everything to be predetermined and prepared. There's only certain elements that you want to prepare, and those elements are what determines how you prepare. Each person probably has unique elements, but there's parts where you might be weak and that you're the most scared on, and those are the parts you work on. So to me, I don't see anything bad coming from preparation per se. I see bad stuff coming from poor preparation.
Okay.
So like going before a speech, going and memorizing the whole thing in front of a mirror may not have any value to you, but maybe there's an element of the speech that you're not very confident about, and you work on that area, because there's definitely elements, like confidence is very situational. Like when you're discussing one thing, you're gonna be more confident about than another. So prepare the areas that you're weak on so that you feel the same comfort from that as you do the other stuff that you feel solid on.
Right. I know of one thing for sure, like from interview, like just preparing for an interview, a lot of questions are like asked the same, like, tell us about your greatest project, or how did the results come out, and how did you help out with that group. And I think what you do is you actually answer the question out loud, and you build vocabulary words that are specific for the situation. So when you actually come to the interview, you can use those individual words that you've obtained from reciting this story over and over and over again, and it's very succinct and to the point. So
and another thing I want to add is like one thing that people often misinterpret is that preparation just means practice, and so they go and they just practice and stuff. There's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration with preparation. Unsuccessful, like preparation can hurt you actually, but you need to take into account, like the biggest thing, like a job interview, you prepare for it over and over, you memorize all these lines, and then the job interviewer asks you a question, and you cite off this long spiel that sounds incredibly robotic. And so what happened there is that they prepared terribly. They didn't prepare in a sense that made them like look genuine and real. So like an actor, when he practices his part, he doesn't just memorize lines. He wants to make it look as real as possible, as on the spot as possible. A stand-up comedian wants to look like he just came up with it on the spot. So they're watching all their stuff, like body language, facial expression, just to make sure it does not sound robotic.
Right. And the main thing is, anytime you memorize something, it makes it sound robotic, because you're trying to recite something from memory. But
so you have to practice it so that it doesn't sound robotic.
Yeah. So anything from like dating to going to presentations to interviewing, never actually memorize your story. Instead, be able to just paint the picture in the way that you wanted to by just telling the story many different times. You can write a story out and then scrap it and then have to rewrite it again, and I guarantee you'll be different. Like a lot of exercises with writing do that too, where you have to write an essay, and sometimes you'll write the whole essay and then people will be like, okay, delete it and write it again, and the second time you write it, it'll actually be better. It just takes a lot of time to prepare that. That's all.